Using the quadratic formula. The fourth method of solving a quadratic equation is by using the quadratic formula, a formula that will solve all quadratic equations. Although the quadratic formula works on any quadratic equation in standard form, it is easy to make errors in substituting the values into the formula. Pay close attention when substituting and use parentheses when inserting a negative number. We can derive the quadratic formula by completing the square. We will assume that the leading coefficient is positive. If it is negative, we can multiply the equation by -1 and obtain a positive a. Given ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, a does not equal 0, we will complete the square as follows. So here's our form, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We can first move the constant term to the right side of the equal sign, so we get -c. And then we want to make sure that we have a leading coefficient of 1, so we can divide through by a. When we divide through by a divided by a gives us x squared, b divided by a is plus b over ax, and -c divided by a is -ca. And then we're going to add an n to both sides. So n is equal to 1/2 of b squared, which is equal to 1/2 times b over a squared, which is equal to b over 2a squared, which is equal to b squared. When you square the 2, it's a 4, and when you square the a, it's a squared. So now we're going to add b squared over 4a squared to both sides of the equation. And so then we're going to factor the perfect square trinomial by looking at what do we have to square to get b squared over 4a squared. So we have x plus b over 2a squared, which is equal to, then we're going to combine these fractions. So the common denominator between a and 4a squared is 4a squared. What do we need to multiply by a to get 4a squared? Well, it's 4a. So we have to multiply our numerator by 4a, so we get -4ac. Now we're going to combine the denominator, so we have 4a squared, and then we're just going to switch the numerator to be b squared minus 4ac. Then we're going to use the square root property. So take the square root of both sides. So we have x plus b over 2a, which is equal to plus or minus the numerator, which is the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And when you take the square root of 4a squared, you get 2a. And then we're going to subtract -b over 2a to both sides. And since they share a common denominator of 2a, we can take this as x, which is equal to -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And you recall, that is the quadratic formula.